Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
All right. Hey. Welcome back to the Invested Dads Podcast, a podcast where we take you on a journey to better your financial future. I am Austin Wilson, research analyst at Hicks & Zerker Capital Management.
And I'm Josh Robb, director of financial planning at Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. So, Austin, how can people help us with our podcast?
Yeah, we would love it if you would subscribe. If you're not subscribed, we drop new episodes every single Thursday on a wide variety of current news and financial planning topics to help you out. So yes, we'd love it if you'd subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We're available on all of them.
Everything.
Also, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If the 3 people in the world that use Google Podcasts
I love to review.
Then leave one there. I mean, no one's going to read it, but go ahead and leave one there. And that brings us to today.
Yes.
So
what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about the clean energy movement.
Oh, good. So we don't need a disclaimer that this is a dirty episode.
This is not dirty. We're not going to check the explicit box
Good.
on this clean energy episode, but I thought I would start
Yes.
with a bit of a history lesson.
Yeah.
So put on your thinking caps.
Yep. Maybe you'll get to this because I don't read your notes ahead of time because I like to be surprised. Clean energy, renewable energy. Are those interchangeable words? Or is there a little difference?
There's a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
We don't actually talk about that, but we can right now. Yeah. So clean really is determined based on the output of whatever you're doing. So if you're burning something and causing some sort of exhaust or greenhouse gas emissions or something like that, that's not necessarily clean, but there are cleaner versions of even that kind of thing, things like natural gas, which we'll talk about. But then you have renewable energy, which is straight up based on what you already have. Mm-hmm. So whether that be wind or solar or hydro.
Would nuclear energy be considered clean energy?
It's really water vapor.
Yeah, but you do have
the only issue is that you have leftover uranium that you have to deal with.
You just bear that amount and forget about it.
That's what they do in Russia, I'm pretty sure.
Now, wood burning would be renewable.
True.
Because you can grow new trees.
Kind of. I mean,
it's not clean?
It's not necessarily renewable or clean because technically that is a finite resource that you've burnt, even though it grows back.
You can make a new one.
It's kind of in the middle. So, we're specifically talking more about all of these in conjunction.
So an example, pedaling a bike attached to a belt,
so for
powering
our
a generator.
Listeners.
So that would be clean and renewable because you could just do that as long as you want.
I don't know. Does the operator
Sweat.
emit some methane? All right. So let's take it back. Time machine. Get in your DeLorean. 1882.
That's not renewable.
Does the term Pearl Street Station ring a bell?
Is that a music group?
No.
Okay.
Thomas Edison, in September 82, he achieved his vision of a full-scale central power station with a system of conductors to distribute electricity to end users in the high-profile business district in New York City.
So that's when people started getting power sent to their homes.
In the U.S. In New York City specifically.
New York City.
Yes.
Interesting.
So 1921, that was actually where the first pulverized coal plant was created and used in St. Francis, Wisconsin. And that used coal to boil water to generate steam and turn turbines.
Okay.
So that was the first pulverized coal exclusive power plant in 1921. 1949, GE, General Electric, installed the first gas turbine built in the U.S. for the purpose of generating power at the Belle Isle station.
Belle Isle.
And that was owned by Oklahoma Gas and Electric.
Okay.
Go forward even a little before that, actually. 1942, world's first nuclear reactor was called Chicago Pile 1. It was an exponential pile. So that's like of nuclear reactor. It's a bunch of nasty grams that we're not going to get into the details of, but we are going to talk a little bit more about
I didn't realize
nuclear.
It was that long ago, though.
Yeah. So that had at least 29 exponential piles constructed in 1942 under the west sands of the University of Chicago's Stag. So then we talk about water a little bit here. So the first modern renewable energy generation got its start in the late 1800s. Hydropower was first to transition to a commercial electricity generation source and advanced very quickly. In 1880,
wow.
Michigan's Grand Rapids Electric, that's called the GR for those who are in the
That was 2 years sooner than Thomas Edison over there.
Yep.
Okay.
So their Grand Rapids Electric Light and Power Co. generated DC electricity using hydropower at the Wolverine Chair Company, a belt-driven dynamo powered by a water turbine. At the factory, lit 16 arc street lamps.
Interesting. So they 16 lamps. They're lighting those up with a little turbine.
With a hydro.
So hydro, not to be confused with Hydra, the evil villains in the Marvel movies.
So bad.
So not the same.
Yeah, pretty much their take on Nazis.
Yes.
But like worse.
Yes.
Maybe. Is that possible? Then we'll talk about wind a little bit. So about the same time that hydropower was gaining popularity, inventors were also figuring out how to use windmills. So they used to use windmills to like pump water out of the ground and all that stuff, but they were trying to use them then to generate electricity. Mm-hmm. So in 1888, Charles Brush, an inventor in Ohio.
Ooh, there you go.
Homeboy. He constructed a 60-foot wind turbine in his backyard. Think about building something 60 feet tall in 1888.
Mm-hmm. On your own.
On your own in your yard. So the windmill's wheel was 56 feet in diameter and had 144 blades.
It's a lot of blades.
Inside there was a shaft, and that turned pulleys and belts, which spun a 12-kilowatt dynamo, which was connected to batteries in the dude's basement.
Interesting.
Craziness. So, interestingly enough, other areas of renewable energy had their sources even before that. So in 1839, a French scientist started looking at what was called photovoltaic power. And that's really what happens when the sunshine really causes little charges to create electricity. And then by the 1880s, you were able to, create solar cells, which is crazy. And since then, they've really gotten more and more popular and more advanced and more efficient. Back then, very, very inefficient. Even today, they're not super efficient, but we're getting there slowly but surely. So, that was kind of a whirlwind of some interesting...
Honestly, I didn't realize those clean energy... I always think clean energy as like a newer concept, but we're talking 1800s of this stuff's coming out before Edison's moving all his power around. So,
yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that leads us to the question of why discuss changing electric sources, power sources now, because we started kind of with
hydro.
Yeah, it was more renewable focused at the beginning.
That's what we had.
Then we worked on burning fossil fuels, coal, all of these sort of things.
We found them in the ground.
Now we're phasing out of those and back into old school renewable energy. So why? Well, I have three answers.
You have three.
Number one is climate change. So the Earth's temperature, it is changing every single year. It's been in a warming cycle for a couple hundred years at least. And many scientists believe this is due to greenhouse gases keeping temperature in the atmosphere and warming it up over time. These greenhouse gases could be from the burning of fossil fuels or methane from animals or a combination of the two. And we know that the Earth's climate has been changing for millennia, but today's scientists specifically fear that higher temperature could melt polar ice caps, raising oceans, and destroying wildlife. Okay, so that's step one of reason why. Number two is finite resources. So the use of fossil fuels has really always been finite, meaning limited supply. Now, when I say limited supply, keep in mind that experts have varying opinions on this.
Yes.
But more recently, it's been estimated that the U.S. has 100+ years of our own oil demand easily in untapped resources. But generally, 50 to 200 years is kind of where we're sitting as a world on all of that. But you couple that with the fact that dependence on oil from places like Russia has put crazy pressure on oil prices, and you have some incentive to look for alternatives, specifically in like Europe.
Because you don't find oil everywhere.
No. Nope.
It's only where the fossils are.
The dead fossils.
Fuels.
Fossil fuels. Number three, the political landscape is definitely causing some of the push for this. So if you look at the general election results, popular vote in 2020, 51% of American voters voted for Joe Biden. So Joe Biden, Democrat. And if we look at Pew Research study that they published, there's a sharp divide between political party affiliation and level of support for climate change action. In fact, even believing that climate change is occurring at all is extremely polarized. So liberal and moderate Democrats alike are both much more likely to believe climate change exists, trust the scientists, and care a great deal about the issue, and vice versa. Moderate and conservative Republicans are less likely to be as concerned with it as an issue in general. So think about where we are in a political landscape right now. Currently, as it sits right now, the House and the Senate are Democratic-controlled, and the White House is Democratic-controlled. So it really shouldn't be surprising that we're getting a lot of discussion around pushing things towards a cleaner, greener energy source. So that's kind of where we stand on the why we may consider changing now.
Yep.
But we should probably talk about some of the definitions of the types of clean energy.
Okay.
And there's some great articles from energy.gov that I will link in the show notes. But let's talk about solar first.
Yes.
Solar energy. So the amount of sunlight that strikes the Earth's surface in an hour and a half is enough to handle the entire world's energy consumption for a full year.
Oh, if you just harness that.
if you can only just harness that. Solar technologies convert sunlight into electrical energy through either photovoltaic panels or through mirrors that concentrate solar radiation. This energy can be used to generate electricity or be stored in batteries or thermal storage.
Okay.
That's number one,
So
solar energy.
if I set up solar at my house, I would have my own solar system then. Yes.
You're like the center
And
of
the
the universe.
construction of it,
Yeah.
I would probably need a planet.
That's right. You'd need to plan it.
I would need to plan it.
Next up's wind. So wind turbines work on a simple principle. Instead of using
simple.
electric to make wind, like a fan, like we
Yes.
usually think of, plug it in and get a fan, you reverse it.
Mhm.
And you use a wind turbine to make electricity.
Oh,
So wind turns a propeller-like blade of a turbine around a rotor, which spins a generator and creates electricity. And these, especially up here in
they're huge.
middle of nowhere, flat land, Ohio, they are everywhere. If you drive down from Findlay, Ohio, down 68, so south, before you get to Kenton, there are bajillions of these things off to the west of you.
Yep.
And if you're on 30
Heading
going
west.
west,
They're
they're
all over.
everywhere.
Yeah, by Van
And
Wert
if you're
area.
driving at night, they all flash their little red lights at the
Oh,
same
yeah.
time, and it is crazy to see.
Oh, yeah.
Like thousands of these.
Do they
things.
have them synced up though?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, some of them, it seems like you get one that's like just a little
Tricky,
far off.
yeah.
So that's wind. Water is another one. So hydropower or hydroelectric power is a renewable source of energy that generates power by using a dam or diversion structure to alter the natural flow of a river or another body of water. That relies on the endless, constantly recharging system of water of the water cycle to produce electricity using a fuel, which is water, that is not reduced or eliminated in the process. There are many types of hydropower facilities, though they are all powered by the kinetic energy of flowing water as it moves downstream. Hydropower utilizes turbines and generators to convert that kinetic energy into electricity, which is then fed into the electric grid to power homes, businesses, industries, all the above.
I always, whenever I think of that, I think of the Hoover Dam,
Yeah, oh yeah.
which I'd
It's
love to go
big.
see sometime. I have not seen it.
Have you seen the videos of people like drop a
Oh
ball
yeah,
off
and
of
like
it?
the spin, it's
Ooh.
huge,
It's-
crazy.
It's insane. And they
That-
built that so long ago.
That's what I mean. That to me is like the cool fact of it is just
It was
the
built in the 30s, right?
the engineering and the mind to figure that out and to take care of it. Crazy, crazy.
So next up, geothermal. So this is a production where a production well is drilled into a known geothermal reservoir. Typically, an injection well is also drilled to return used geothermal fluids to the geothermal reservoir. Hot geothermal fluids, this is a mouthful, flow through pipes to a power plant for use in generating electricity. Hot pressurized geothermal fluid, or a secondary working fluid, is allowed to expand rapidly and provide rotational or mechanical energy to turn the turbine blades on a shaft. Rotational energy from the turbine shaft is used to directly spin magnets inside a large coil and create electrical current. The turbine and generator are the primary pieces of equipment used to convert geothermal energy to electrical energy. Electrical current from the generator is sent to a step-up transformer outside the power plant. Voltage is increased in the transformer, and the electrical current is transmitted over power lines to homes, businesses, and buildings.
I did not understand any of that.
But think of it like this. The Earth's temperature, I'm thinking of as an example, my parents have geothermal
Yep, my parents did.
in their house.
Yeah.
So the Earth's temperature is like 50 some degrees, right?
Mhm.
Under the surface.
Yep.
So when it is cooler than 50 some degrees outside, you are able to run water and stuff through that 50 some degree Earth and essentially bring your temperature up to that temperature. And then
Yep.
anything above that, you'll use natural gas
Yeah,
or
whatever you need.
propane or electric. When it goes the other way, you can cool things down to that temperature as well by running that fluid through the Earth's temperature and then cooling it that way. So that's kind of the way I think of it.
Yep.
In a much more layman's terms, because I'm a layman.
You're using the natural temperature stability
Yes.
of being underground a certain depth
Yep.
to say, it's pretty much 50 degrees all the time.
Yep.
And if it's 100 degrees outside, you can cool
Yep.
very efficiently. Or if it's freezing outside, you can warm very efficiently. So
Yes.
it cuts your cost down. Now, this also then is generating electricity using magnets.
Yes. So yeah, it does all of the above.
Crazy.
So one of the coolest examples of this, and it's kind of hometown bias, but have you ever been to Ohio Caverns?
Yes.
That's from my hometown.
Yeah.
So West Liberty, Ohio.
Mhm.
Ohio Caverns, some of the biggest, if not I think the biggest caverns in Ohio. They have, you actually legitimately go into caves underground.
It's cold.
A long way down. And in the summer, it's cold. And in the winter, it's warm.
Mhm.
It's 50 some degrees all the time. in these caves.
Yes.
It's crazy. So that's like the best example of
you got
geothermal in general.
So I could just carry my energy in there and cool it down.
Leave it there and then take it home and be good to go. Bioenergy is next, and this is essentially just the burning of plant-based biomaterials. It could be wood energy, algae, grass, wood, anything. You could burn it and then turn that into steam or whatever, turn turbine. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can burn biomass. Nuclear is considered a pretty clean energy as well. So they contain and control nuclear chain reactions that produce heat through a physical process called fission, not fusion. But fission is where atoms split and release energy. Yeah. And that heat is used to make steam, which turns a turbine to create electricity. There are more than 440 commercial reactors worldwide, including 94 in the United States. It is one of the largest resources of reliable, carbon-free electricity available.
Interesting.
And ironically, it's not like where the big push is, because I think there has always been kind of a fear of it because there have been some issues. Chernobyl, there was one in Japan. Like, bad things have happened due to bad designs, bad technology,
or earthquakes,
human error, earthquakes, all the above. And that's kind of limited the excitement on nuclear energy, but it is awesome. It's super efficient at what it does.
And clean.
And super clean.
From exhaust.
You get a steam.
Yes.
Steam is it, and I can handle steam. Another one is hydrogen and fuel cells. So hydrogen is a clean fuel that when consumed in a fuel cell produces only water. So like you can literally buy in some parts of America a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. Honda made one a while back called the FCX Clarity, I believe. Literally it burnt hydrogen and you had water exhaust.
Vapor
came out of your exhaust. That's all that came out.
Where do you get it though? Not the car, but the hydrogen.
Well,
that's the problem.
You have to distill it down and get it from a couple different areas and then get it into a way that you can deliver it into the vehicle. And it's very, very expensive and very hard to do. And actually, until recently, wasn't even available to be transported in liquid form. But now it can, but it's still very expensive. It's explosive,
right?
Yeah, it's not good. But it's
it's unstable, I guess I should say.
We're breathing some hydrogen right now. I mean, come on. H2O.
Yeah.
And another one is natural gas, and this is one that specifically, as I talked about the political landscape, is a little less out of favor, or a little bit more out of favor in the current political environment, but from a green energy standpoint, actually probably should be focused on a lot, because it's an extremely abundant resource, specifically here in the U.S. New discoveries and extraction methods have led to a dramatic rise in shale gas development, so that's like fracking and getting natural gas out of the earth. So the U.S. is actually the leading natural gas producer of the entire world. And it burns very, very, very cleanly.
It's clean burning.
So that is why any clean energy plan should have a heavy emphasis on that. Now, there is a finite resource as well, like we had talked about, but it is an abundant finite resource, at least as of now.
Yeah. And there's a debate in my house what natural gas actually means, because kids think it's
natural, Dad.
It's natural.
It's natural.
So, all right, let's do a dad joke. Do a quick break while you're there. So we were talking about the wind turbines, and I read a story about these wind turbines were getting built right next to a baseball field, and they were really excited because they're big fans.
Big fans. That's awesome.
Big fans.
I need some big fans. So let's talk about government action, because government action has had a big impact on how easily this transition occurs and how much money goes into it and all this stuff. So according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which I'll link in the show notes, federal, state, and local governments and electric utilities encourage investing in and in using renewable energy, and in some cases even requirement. So there are many programs and incentives that are currently available at this point. I'm going to label a handful of them. So there are some government financial incentives. So several federal government tax credits, grants, and loan programs are available for qualifying renewable energy technologies and projects. The federal tax incentives or credits for qualifying renewable energy products or equipment include, there's a handful: renewable electricity production tax credit, the investment tax credit, the residential energy credit, and the modified accelerated cost recovery system. Grants and loan programs may be available from several government entities, including the U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Energy, and the U.S. Department of Interior. Most states have some financial incentives available to support or subsidize the installation of renewable energy equipment.
Yeah, so it's like you put solar panels on your house,
you get a rebate, or you get something like that. Yep. Another one is renewable portfolio standards and state mandates or goals. So a renewable portfolio standard typically requires that a percentage of electric power sales in a state come from a renewable energy source. Some states have specific mandates for power generation from renewable energy, and some states have voluntary goals. Compliance with these policies will sometimes require or allow trading of renewable energy certificates. So like you could, if one area does better than the other, sometimes they can work together and like net each other out. Another one is renewable energy certificates or credits, like I just mentioned. These are financial products available for sale, purchase, or trade that allow a purchaser to pay for renewable energy production without directly obtaining the energy from renewable energy sources. The most widely available products are often, but not always, called renewable energy certificates or credits, which may be used by electric utilities to comply with state renewable energy portfolio standards. Other products, such as green tags or green certificates, may be available to facilitate purchase of renewable energy production by consumers in areas where local utilities do not offer a green power option. So those, you can actually, if you don't meet the qualifications, you can buy the qualifications.
For somebody who has extra.
Yeah. Net metering is another one. This allows electric utility customers to install qualifying renewable energy systems on their properties and to connect the system to an electric utilities distribution system or grid. The programs vary, but in general, electric utilities bill their net metering customers for the amount of electricity the customers use during a defined period.
Yep.
So really, if you have a renewable source that generates some electricity, solar panels, wind, who knows, water, who knows, maybe you have a river.
Nuclear power plant.
And yeah, you have a big old battery and a converter and stuff, and you can store and essentially optimize how your house uses it, but you also have an abundance. You can sell it back to the grid.
And some of them require you to send it up. You can't even store it.
Right.
Yep.
Another one's feed-in tariffs. So several states and individual electric utilities in the United States have established special rates for purchasing electricity from certain types of renewable energy systems. These rates, known as feed-in tariffs, are generally higher than electricity rates otherwise available to the generator. They're intended to encourage new projects of specific types of renewable energy technologies. So again, incentivizing the use of renewable energy. Another one is green power purchasing. Consumers in nearly every state can purchase green power. This represents electricity generated from specific types of renewable energy sources. Most of these voluntary programs generally involve the physical or contractual delivery of the electricity generation resource to the customer or utility. Another one is ethanol and other renewable motor fuels. So this is
like the
something
E85
yeah,
gas.
widely debated because we're having high oil prices and high gas prices. The current administration is discussing using the higher, what we use in the winter, ethanol requirements even through the summer to bring down gas prices, which actually since the mid-90s or so, most U.S. vehicles, gas vehicles, have been built to use some sort of ethanol in their fuel system and been okay with it. As long as you're driving them on a regular basis, probably not such a big deal. But if you have an older vehicle, and especially a carbureted vehicle, they throw fits with ethanol.
They like it.
Ethanol has moisture and water in it that is not good for moving parts, and if it sits too long, it gums things up and becomes a nightmare. So, word to the wise, if you have something with a carburetor, try and find...
How do you know if you have a carburetor?
Well, that would be if you have no fuel injection. So if you have an older vehicle that generally probably from the mid-'80s or before, probably have carburetor instead of fuel injection. And this is older school, easy to adjust, but also much more finicky. Carburetors are pretty much, you have to set the jetting of how much fuel at what levels goes into the intake to essentially get burnt. Fuel injection automatically adjusts that and electronically. So every car is different, but your mower, your dirt bike, your four-wheeler, your whatever, anything small engine-wise, probably has a carburetor on it still.
Oh.
And you should probably do your best to find some ethanol-free fuel, which in Finley we do have some. So check that out.
Good to know.
Good to know. Another one is renewable research and development. So the government has grants and funds to really encourage and incentivize further growth in this space.
Okay, Austin.
Woo!
That was a lot. I don't care about any of that.
Yeah, you do.
Well, the credits and stuff for the government doesn't matter to me. What I do want to know is how can someone invest in this trend if they were interested in it? Which again, it's not a recommendation. This is just some investment options out there for this trend.
I've got some good ones.
What do you got?
You might even like them.
Are there some good tickers?
Good tickers.
That's what I hope for.
So first of all, there are some individual stocks that are in the space. Number one is a company called Next Era Energy, ticker NEE. Not saying buy it, but it is a Florida-based utility company with a ton of focus on renewable energy.
Florida, they got sun, they got wind.
They got sun, they got wind, they got it all. So that's one. Another one is First Solar panels. FSLR is the ticker there. And another one is, unsurprisingly, Tesla. Because Tesla has solar business. Mm-hmm. They have generator stuff that goes with that. They have electric vehicles. It's pretty much the green energy kind of focused company.
There you go.
There are some ETFs, and this is where Josh is going to get excited.
All right.
The iShares Global Clean Energy ETF is the ticker ICLN.
iClean.
The First Trust NASDAQ Clean Edge Green Energy Index Fund. Woo! That's a mouthful. QClean.
All right.
QCLN. The Invesco Solar ETF. Ticker TAN. TAN.
Okay.
The Invesco MSCI Sustainable Future ETF. Ticker ERTH. Earth.
There you go.
First Trust Global Wind Energy ETF.
They were probably first to the game here.
Ticker FAN. FAN.
They nailed it.
Great.
Wind energy.
The Global X Renewable Energy Producers ETF. RNRG. Renewable Energy. RNRG.
They're getting creative there.
They are getting creative. Go. So, Josh, the question you've been waiting for this entire time is, should you invest in renewable energy?
Well, that just depends, Austin. It really does. It depends, like always, on your long-term financial plans, what your goals are, what your objectives, and your risk tolerance. But again, if you're in fully diversified portfolio, chances are you have some exposure to this because the utilities are a sector of the S&P 500. So if you have some exposure here to the U.S. stock market, you probably have some exposure. And even if you look at like AEP and energy, they have portions that are renewable. So you have some exposure to clean energy, probably in a diversified portfolio already. But in general, this is something that as a world trying to find the long-term sustainability of energy, that this is probably a space that over the long run will be around. So, do you need exposure to it? You probably already do, and depending on your goals and trends. But yes, that's probably something.
Specifically speaking, if you own an index fund, large cap U.S. index fund, you likely own. NextEra Energy is the largest publicly traded utility in the United States. So that is a part of that index fund at market.
You're in there. Yep.
Tesla is in the top 10 largest companies in the U.S. There's a sizable position there as well. So. No surprise that you probably already have some exposure to it.
Now, there is trends where people who are wanting their values, beliefs to line up with their investing, socially responsible investing, this is where this trend may overlap even more with your investment holdings, if that's kind of how you lean on that direction.
Well, Josh, what can listeners do for us?
Well, put in a giant solar, nuclear-powered wind turbine for hydro in your backyard
over a river,
and you're good to go. No, what they could do for us is share this episode with your friends and family, and if you have any ideas, questions, or thoughts, or if you have a giant solar panel in your backyard, send us a picture. I don't know.
Absolutely, we'll tweet it.
Sure,
we'll tweet it out.
But yeah, high level though, we love interacting with our fans. We love talking with you about topics that you're interested in. So shoot us an email at hello@theinvesteddads.com and share with us ideas you'd like us to talk about.
All right, well, until next Thursday, have a great week.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.